Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So as we know, in the last 24 hours, Dillian Whyte has pulled out of his fight with Otto Wallin, citing an apparent shoulder injury. And this has got people speaking in regards to whether this injury is actually real, which is a perfectly reasonable question as far as I'm concerned, especially considering what situation Dillian Whyte finds himself in with the WBC, the fact that he's mandatory, and the fact that Dillian Whyte has avoided various heavyweights in the past. So people naturally are very sceptical when it comes to this injury, and there has been some developments in regards to this situation. Otto Wallin's promoter, Dimitri Salita, has actually been talking to a few media outlets and actually said that he wants medical proof of the injury regarding Dillian Whyte. Otherwise, he may pursue legal action, which I believe is perfectly fair and reasonable, especially considering the situation. And I've heard Matchroom fanboys, the usual types who get their boxing news from Sun Sport or IFL Eddie Hearn interviews. I've heard these guys say, well, Dillian Whyte doesn't owe Otto Wallin anything. It was a voluntary shot. Therefore, Dillian Whyte is perfectly okay to move on and not fight Otto Wallin. Basically, the Matchroom fanboys are insinuating that Dillian Whyte has no contractual obligations towards Otto Wallin. Now, I find that to be a complete and utter ridiculous viewpoint on this situation. Now, if Dillian Whyte is legitimately injured and he does have a shoulder injury, obviously he can pull out, and maybe there's no clause in the contract that indicates that this fight would have to be rescheduled. That is a possibility, and more than likely a likelihood if the injury is legitimate. But what I am saying is, you can't sign a contract to, and be scheduled to fight somebody and then pull out with a fake injury. And that's what some of these Matchroom fanboys are basically saying, that it's okay for Dillian Whyte to do that because Otto Wallin is a voluntary fight. That's what these guys are saying. And ultimately, I think Eddie Hearn, I think Dillian Whyte owes it to Dimitri Salita, Otto Wallin, and the boxing fans to show proof of this injury, because right now things are appearing way too convenient for Mr. Dillian Whyte, especially considering recently the WBC announced that the winner of Fury Wilder would have to face the interim WBC champion, Dillian Whyte. They ordered that to happen, and that mandatory will be called 30 days after Fury versus Wilder 3. So for Dillian Whyte to pull out now seems rather convenient, and as a result of that, I believe proof should be provided not only to Otto Wallin, but also to the boxing fans. I think that's fair. I'm sure there's people out there who may have signed up to DAZN to watch this fight. After all, Eddie Hearn claimed that this was a pay-per-view worthy fight if it was on Sky Sports. So, consumer trust and all that. I think Eddie Hearn should, clear the air and let us know that this injury is indeed real. Because right now it seems like Dimitri Salita is not happy. He's not had any proof that this injury is indeed real. According to Eddie Hearn, they done an MRI scan on Dillian Whyte's shoulder. If that's the case, simply send Dimitri Salita proof of that injury, and maybe us boxing fans. I mean, after all, Eddie Hearn is the same guy who said that Frank Warren should produce proof for Daniel Dubois' eye injury. So maybe Eddie Hearn should follow his own advice and put proof out there to show that Dillian Whyte is injured. And I think if he did provide proof, this situation would go away. And ultimately, if they did provide proof that Dillian Whyte was injured or got injured, I wouldn't even ask him to reschedule this fight. I would be happy for him to chase his mandatory spot, which he's entitled to. But given the situation, given the circumstances, I think it's perfectly reasonable that we are shown proof of this injury. And, I would expect these boxing social media channels, Boxing Social, IFL, Seconds Out, Behind the Gloves, to ask Eddie Hearn that question, especially considering he went on their platforms demanding Frank Warren for proof of Daniel Dubois' eye injury. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, after all. And I find it funny, Boxing Social is already putting out, defence pieces for Dillian Whyte, getting guys like Alan Babich and Dean White saying that these fake injury rumours are ludicrous, etc. They've already received their orders and are doing damage control on behalf of the promoter. But when it came to Daniel Dubois, these guys, IFL, Boxing Social, etc., they couldn't wait to stick the knife in and get on any Tom, Dick and Harry who was having their say on Daniel Dubois. And yet these same Boxing Social media channels, we know who they are. When it came to Billy Joe Saunders doing the exact same thing, these guys all came together and orchestrated a big damage control campaign on behalf of Billy Joe Saunders. So there's so many double standards when it comes to British boxing fans. It's absolutely ridiculous. All I'm asking for is legit proof of Dillian Whyte's injury, and if that is provided, I will leave this alone. I wouldn't even ask for Dillian Whyte to reschedule this fight, considering his situation. That's fair enough, but I do want proof, and if proof isn't provided, I will consider this a duck, especially considering Dillian Whyte is a guy who's already ducked numerous heavyweights in the division. So all I'm asking for is proof. And again, I have to make a point to these matchroom mongrels who are basically saying that it's okay if Dillian Whyte's faked an injury. These guys are basically saying that it's okay for Dillian Whyte to sign a contract saying that he would fight a guy, then pull out with a fake injury, therefore making Otto Wallin spend tens of thousands of dollars on sparring partners, nutrition, as well as spending God knows how many hours of his own time preparing for a fight that was never going to happen. For guys to say that's okay is disgusting as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely disgusting. But, that's the nature of a fanboy. Again, all I'm asking for is proof. At least show proof to Otto Wallin's team, because they can then confirm that they've had that proof. That'll be enough. But until then, I'm going to assume this to be a duck. How about you guys? Am I being too harsh? Or do you agree with me? Share your thoughts below. I want to hear your take on this situation. I don't think it's been handled all that well. I think it's a bit of a PR disaster, in all honesty, especially considering the backlash DAZN have got in the past couple of weeks or so. I don't think it's a good look, quite frankly. But share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.